Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, people of the world. It's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a special guest. Everyone's a special guest. I'm joined by the Professor Don, Michael Don. Now, we met particularly because our young little mini humans both go to daycare on campus, and just getting connected and staying in touch, and me being an extrovert, I just kept on bothering him, and we became friends. And so, as I've come to understand at Mason, it's a whole big world where a lot of people, I'm on the student affairs side, he's on the faculty side, that we have obviously very different experiences, with our careers and how we go about our day-to-day at George Mason. And so every time I have someone that's in the academic realm, I love to learn about what they're doing, what they're studying, what they're teaching. And so Michael is teaching, I believe, creative writing. And I'm not going to get that wrong. Am I wrong?
Well, I'm teaching more so composition classes, but I've taught a lot of creative writing in the past, and I am a fiction writer.
There it is. Okay. So I'm halfway, half right. And so that's it. I think I want to have a maybe call this podcast or this topic, a career in writing. How do you, have a career in this? So before we get started, Michael, give the listeners a little bit of who you are, introduction.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. Great to be on the pod. Like Phil said, I'm a professor at George Mason. I teach in the English department, mostly first year composition courses and a little bit of advanced composition. In the past, I've taught at a bunch of other universities in the U.S. and in Kenya, where I lived for a couple of years. I'm a fiction writer. I have written one book of short stories. It's called Partners and Strangers. I write a little bit of creative nonfiction as well, and I'm working on another book of short stories that is almost complete, and also thinking about another project beyond that. In addition to writing and teaching, I co-edit a literary journal that's based out of Nairobi, Kenya, and I co-edit, or I should say I'm the fiction editor for a journal that's for teachers, focuses on writing about teaching, but in the literary forms: poetry, fiction, creative nonfiction.
Well, that's pretty dope. Actually, I'm learning a new thing. I didn't even know nothing about no Kenya, so that's pretty awesome. So talk about, take us to your journey. I always go way back. I don't know, as early as you want to start. When did this thought about writing, and this was the thing I like to do, when did that start?
Yeah, I usually answer that question with fifth grade, which is in Miss Kent's class at Captain Elementary School in St. Louis, Missouri. She was a really cool teacher who gave us she was a very creative person herself, and I think wanted us to just explore, have more kind of like free, unstructured time and just explore our interests in mind. So every day we'd have like a big chunk of time where we could kind of do whatever we wanted, within reason. And I would always, sit down and write, and I worked on this really long story that eventually, handwritten in, huge fifth grade sloppy font, became like a 90 or 100 page story that I just kind of, put in the middle of my table at the end of every day. Sadly, one day I came to school and it was gone. It had just disappeared. But then throughout childhood, I was really into drawing and recently at my parents' house in St. Louis, where I grew up, I found some illustrations of like basketball players that I wrote poems to. So I remember writing some songs, even though I wasn't so musically inclined, but I liked the lyrics, and was always kind of just making up little little stories and songs as a kid, and then it started becoming more formalized when I took classes in high school and college, and that's when I realized I really love writing stories, and along the way I'd also always really loved reading fiction as well.
So maybe somewhere out there, if we see something come out of St. Louis, it's a 90-page children's book. Someone took your work.
I don't think it was that good. That would be generous. That would be a mistake on their part.
I don't know, man. And then I love it. The poem was just like talking about like how dope Michael Jordan was, or like what?
Yeah. The poem I found recently was Patrick Ewing, so the underdog.
I love
but
it.
Yeah, I did love Jordan. I was a big Jordan fan, of course, as everyone was, and Chicago was the closest city with an NBA team. So even though I know he was a national and international phenomenon, he was my guy.
I love it. I mean, I love to see that Patrick Ewing poem. It's probably like that last, was it the shot he missed that they put on a 30 for 30, whatever.
Yeah, I think I was trying to get him, capture him actually making it. So,
So, okay, man, you're doing it in 5th grade. You're writing short stories. You're writing poems. You're putting them away, and I know a lot of people, like when you go to college, a lot of people say, "What are you going to do with your job?" And you pick a major that's X, Y, and Z. So, talk about that process of when you went to college and you kind of went into the writing realm of college.
Yeah, so I started off as a psychology major and I finished as a psychology major, but along the way I took, half a dozen or so creative writing classes and ended up doing a minor in English, and took some of course literature classes as well. I don't know. I think I was one of those 18, 19-year-olds who enters college not really having a clear idea of what they wanted to do. I was always interested in like the internal experience. So I think it's one of the reasons why I ended up starting in psychology. It's probably no coincidence that there are a lot of therapists in my family, my mom included, an aunt, a grandma. But I also just think that was always an interest of mine, just kind of the internal psychological and emotional experiences. And I think you see a lot of that in my writing. And so I think the psychology classes and the creative writing and literature classes all kind of, spoke to each other in a way, and that I'm working through characters who are, dealing with their internal, struggles and dilemmas and, navigating what it's like to be a thinking and feeling human. And so, I didn't do anything practical with the psychology major. I did not, but I had great creative writing mentors and they really encouraged me. And so one day, after a few years of working for a nonprofit in Boston, I decided to try to go to grad school for creative writing and just kind of see what would happen. I wanted to carve out some time to actually try to do it more full time as opposed to as a hobby, because I was writing a lot of stories along the way, even after college. At the job I just mentioned, when I had downtime, when there wasn't much to do, or on the weekends, I'd be thinking up story ideas and writing stories.
So in the interim before, I love that. So you were working in a nonprofit in Boston. Were you, a lot of people say, and what I've heard a lot is that people have somewhere where they dump their stories. Did you have like a real handwritten book, or you would go home and get on a computer and just save it on the computer?
Yeah, I was doing it more so on the computer. I think at the time, I think I had like one of those WordPress blogs that I just kept kind of private and was dumping stuff into there. And then also had some, just Word docs on a computer, and I had some notebooks too. I was a little bit scattered and still kind of am. Like I keep notes to this day. I have notes on my phone. I have notes on my laptop, all in different spaces. I have like 6 notebooks going at any one time, and there's not a lot of method to my madness. You'd think I'd be like a really messy person, but I like love physical spaces being tidy. But for whatever reason with the like creative work, I'm messy there. And then I'm kind of tidy with like my car. I mean, never mind the kids, but, you know, my room, again, never mind the kids, but
yeah. So I'm just going to go on a limb and make assumptions that to get into grad school, you had to submit your best work or writing. Was that hard to like say like you're like, all right, you want to be a writer, pick 3 things to share with us or something? Like, how'd you do that?
I think it's really hard, and I think it's also just such a crapshoot because when you're researching grad programs, it's very easy to look at who the faculty are and make assumptions like, oh, this person, you know, writes about this, and I have a story that's also about that, so I should send it there. And it's like, well, 1, that person may not be on the committee and may never read your story. 2, it may backfire. They may decide, hey, this is my lane or whatever. So, I mean, I think it's like the wisdom is always just submit like your best work, submit what you feel most excited about. And I was fortunate enough at the time to have a couple mentors in Boston from college who were still reading my work, and they really helped me have some clarity as to which were my best stories, you know, which ones were kind of ringing true versus those that might have been more contrived, you know, ones that I was kind of forcing versus the ones that just kind of, you know, felt more honest. And so when I got to actually applying, I felt like I had a pretty good sense of, and I could feel it in my heart as well, but it was nice to have, you know, established writers say like, yeah, these are really hitting home. Like these characters are complex and not just, you know, stereotypes.
Yeah. So then when you got into grad school, you know, I'll share personally my experience, and I got a history degree. And then when I was in counseling, I got my master's in counseling. I remember specifically doing that little, hello, my name is Philip. You know, my undergrad was in this. And I had someone in my class say, why are you here? Like, I was like, because everyone else was like answering like, hi, my name is this. I studied psychology in undergrad. I studied social work in undergrad. Everyone went through some helping profession. I was like, hi, my name is Philip. I studied history. And so I was like, that was like 2 cents. And then now I'm like, you know, in hindsight, I would have probably defended myself and say, I can come from any discipline, don't matter. I want to help people, so whatever. But, you know, you don't say that when you're like insecure or whatever. So what about the environment and creative writing? Was it mostly like English, creative writing, English, and then like, hi, psychology, or was it very cross-disciplinary?
It was pretty diverse in that way. I remember there were engineers, there were, you know, I think, you know, I want to say there was someone who was like in biology or something. I may be misremembering that. But yeah, I think maybe a third to half had studied English, and then another half to 2/3 came from other disciplines. So that part was not so intimidating to me. I felt like, you know, people definitely were coming from different backgrounds, and just having taken, you know, so many creative writing workshops in college made me feel like I kind of understood the format. Mm-hmm. You know, the graduate level classes were smaller, but it was kind of a similar deal, similar format.
Gotcha. So as you neared grad school graduation, was that when the trajectory of becoming an academic and teaching it came in the realm? Or I'm just curious, like, for that, you know, MA, is it MA, right?
It's an MFA.
MFA, yeah. Like, you know, where were people going? Like, when they graduated, where did people go? Like, was it majority like that academic?
That's a great question. It would be impossible for me to necessarily give like percentages, but no. I had like some peers, colleagues went on to teach. There's another one like went on to do some copy editing. Or a few did that. You know, I think people went on to get degrees in social work, you know, other degrees. And, you know, so there's a whole, I think there was really, others went on to do PhDs, truly a whole range. Others started their own, you know, small businesses.
Advertising? People go to advertising? Like advertising?
I'm sure some did. My program was so small that, it wasn't even that many. My sample is very small.
We know after this, what we're gonna do. We're gonna do a informal study. We're gonna stalk them. We're gonna stalk them on LinkedIn and see where they went. Because I'm very curious. But for you then, so now we got our sample, everyone going to different places. Then how did, tighten it for you then?
So part of my graduate school program, everyone was funded through teaching assistantships and other kinds of assistantships, but everyone taught a lot. It was a 3-year program and everyone taught a lot, usually 2 classes a semester. And I went to grad school thinking that I might like teaching, but I was going for the writing, and I ended up liking it a lot. And I got to teach a range of classes, business and technical writing. I taught creative writing workshops, and I really liked it and wanted to continue. I moved to Kenya immediately after graduating the program, and I had no idea what opportunities would be there for me. I ended up getting linked up with a university that was looking for more qualified people to teach writing classes, and ended up picking up a couple classes a semester. So I continued teaching in Kenya, and then found another position actually at my graduate school alma mater when we returned, and then from there taught at a couple more universities before I ended up at George Mason.
Hold on, what was the grad school?
It was the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. So
from St. Louis to that, was that close to home too? Or?
Yeah, it's the closest I've lived home since leaving at 18. So my record was 2 hours and 38 minutes with no stops. Yeah. That's driving 74 miles per hour in a 70 mile per hour zone, because I don't like to speed too much. I'm just kind of slow and steady. Yeah. So 238 is my PR personal record, is you're running the runners. The track and field.
Track people know that.
Audience will know that. Yeah.
So when did you meet Sophia?
Oh, so we met at the, she was working at the nonprofit in Boston. It's called Facing History and Ourselves. It's an educational nonprofit that kind of supports middle school and high school teachers to teach about like social justice, human rights, things like that.
Yeah, that's her.
I
know that's her wheelhouse. Gotcha.
Yeah, so she was there already, we met on the job.
I'm also making an assumption. Then you had a long distance relationship in Kenya.
No, so we went to Kenya together. So that's where her research is based, actually. And so she had a couple of grants to do research there, and we had just gotten married.
So it's good, y'all
right
together.
Before we went. Yeah,
I was about to say, dang, you was solo in Kenya. You was with someone. In Kenya.
No,
Gotcha.
we were together. So I went because of her work, because of her research.
Gotcha. Now, I think we were brainstorming ideas, and so I'm gonna jump, totally pivot, right? And I think the thing we started talking about before we even started doing this podcast was like, we're both creative people. You like to creative write, I like to podcast, but now we got kids, and as you can see, we're doing it. We fit in time when we can fit time in. I'm recording when I can. Sometimes I record at night. I try to squeeze this creative endeavor that I don't get paid for into my life. Can you fast forward, like, how have you been able to keep up with your creativity in the space of all these things? Because you just said earlier that you're on a newer project. Take us through that, the creative project and family life.
Yeah. So, I mean, first off, I think it's just, as it's changes your life profoundly. I mean, I'm trying to figure life, I guess, because it's a catch-all. Like, it's not just one thing. It's just changes your life profoundly, and it certainly changes like the structure of your day, for example, profoundly. So I think that one thing I've noticed, thinking about this issue, is just that I've gone from working with like big chunks of time to just figuring out how to use, shorter periods of time. I mean, just like working with like this compression of time. And being kind of okay with that, like just deciding like, here's a 45-minute window to write. You don't have a 3-hour window anymore, and that's okay. That's just the reality. And sometimes I think it's actually helpful. Sometimes it makes me procrastinate less. It's like, okay, hurry up and do something. And takes a little bit of pressure off too. Sometimes it's like, okay, I don't need to work on this project for 3 hours. I can just try to be productive for 45 minutes. And then like, I have all these other things I have to do. So just go to it,
So the first book, which I'm gonna put that in the show notes, was that pre-kids, the first book?
Yeah. So it was written pre-kids. It was published in 2019. So my daughter was, I think, about 10 months when it came out. But it was written primarily while I was in grad school, and then a couple of the pieces, it's 13 short stories, and 2 or 3 of the pieces were written, like 2015, 2016. Then it was accepted for publication in 2018 and came out in 2019. So yeah, that book was written pre-kids.
So then, what was the timeline again? Oh, so you said finished by 18, 13 short stories. So what was the timeline again?
Yeah, so I wrote it mostly between 2010 and 2016, 17. Those were the years I was working on it. It was accepted for publication in 18 and published in 19.
So what I'm hearing is that, I mean, even the first time before kids, it was an extensive, like 7-something year process. So do you, like, in your mind mentally say, okay, I'm just going to times that by like 2, or add like for 7 years, I'm gonna do it 9 years? How's that work now?
I try not to think about that because that's the whole timeline thing it can be discouraging if you think too much about it. I will say, the new collection I'm working on, and I have a full manuscript, I'm just editing and revising it now. The biggest piece in there is like an 80-page novella. And I actually drafted that also before having kids. And so I kind of had a head start. I was working on some of this stuff before the other book was actually out. Because you're kind of, the way the publication cycle works, it's like by the time your book is accepted for publication, you've already been on to something new. Like the whole process just takes so long. And then, yeah, I mean, it's already been 4 years since that book came out. So I've been just slowly getting things, things have, just slowly getting done. And in 4 years, even though I haven't felt like, I don't feel like I've had a ton of time to write a lot between the pandemic and having a couple of kids, I look back and I'm like, well, there's still work getting produced. So, again, a couple of the pieces in there, the big one and another one, I think were written before kids, but it's just kind of, I think will probably end up taking about the same amount of time as the first book, probably about 6-7 years of writing.
So now that you have kids, I'm just curious, like, do they randomly, their personalities come into stories? Like, are you are you now like throwing a character and down the line, your kids will read this and be like, hey, that sounds like me or mommy or something? Like, are you inspired? The muses do you throw everyday people into your stories? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think all my characters are sort of like a composite or amalgamation of myself and other people in my life. I always find it hilarious when you read the inside cover of a novel or a collection of short stories. There's this like legal disclaimer that's like the characters in these in this book are fictional, and it's like purely coincidental if they resemble real people. And it's just, every fiction writer knows that's just a complete joke, because we don't just imagine things. We take an imaginative leap. We combine, we do have an imagination, but where does imagination come from? I mean, we don't become blank slates when we're trying to imagine. And so that's kind of something I always just find kind of funny, but I know it's just a legal thing. But yes, absolutely. A lot of the characters are, just kind of composites or start as someone, but then become someone else. And yeah, there's one particular story I'm working on that I feel like the voice of the kid is, resembles my daughter a little bit, but I'll try to mask that a little bit and, try to invent a little bit. So it's not, so I'm not writing her as a character.
So her name won't be Famera.
No, it won't be. Yeah.
Famera. And then
no.
I won't be mad if you throw a random black guy with Austin tattooed on his leg in your story either.
Right.
I'll be flattered. Like,
I'll make sure.
Random guy comes to the door and he has Austin tattooed on his leg. Just, I'll highlight that sentence.
I appreciate the permission. I
will sue you.
I'll get you in there.
You can call me Felipe. Just change my name.
I'll get you in there.
Okay. So, talk about, I'm always curious, right? Like, I know that my wife does not listen to every episode. I'm being real, right? Or she don't listen to all my stuff. She knows this is a creativity thing, but I do get hyped, and I'm very happy when she does listen to my stuff, or she says, I liked that episode that you did. And, and let me rephrase, I don't have the expectation that she'll listen to everything, right? Like, I don't, read all the emails I should be reading for her, you know what I'm saying? Like, but having someone, I think for me, even with this podcast, it's cool and all when I get like someone I don't know says, hey, I listened to your show, but I actually honestly get more juiced up when it's like my friends or people like, that take their time to do that. So can you talk about that? Like the support of your family when someone that actually reads what you write and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely means a lot to me. Sophia, my partner, definitely reads, not everything, but a fair amount, and less now just because we're so busy. But again, before kids, she read pretty much everything. And, I obviously respect her opinion a lot. So she has helped me actually revise stories, take them in different directions, make characters more real. So that's really helpful, having a partner who's also just a very skilled writer and editor herself. I have a writing group that meets on Zoom because we're in different parts of the country. A couple of a couple of friends from grad school, long time ago, we were grad students, but a couple of friends from grad school and another writer. And that's really helpful in terms of just like the support, reading each other's stuff and, giving feedback and just feeling like you're not alone in it. Family members and friends, I send work out to, especially when it's been published, and hearing, even just a little bit of affirmation or doing a reading and, a public reading and having someone there say, like, I really enjoyed that story. It helps you keep going. Like, you realize it's not that there's anything wrong with writing for oneself, but it feels like there is, maybe a little bit of a dialogue, then, a little bit of support. I think your question was about like people, and I think like, it's really helpful in terms of feeling support from, the people in your life, and then to hear from others who are not necessarily in your life, strangers or just people part of the writing community is also pretty cool, because that's when you feel like maybe it's like part of a dialogue. It's in your work is in conversation with something they've written or something they've read or something they've been thinking about. And that's very satisfying as well.
Yeah. Because what I was thinking about is that for me, like I said, I like the fact that you said two things that resonated with me as someone as creative is, two, I'm not alone. So I've joined like lots of podcast groups. So I get tips from other people. So that's always been helpful, just collaborating with other people. And then I think the other thing that you said too that resonated with me was conversation. Because I never thought about it. Like most times when I was doing this podcast, I was just throwing things out into the ethos, right? Just like I create something, it goes out there. I don't know what's going to do, but it's out there. But it does feel like, you're throwing like a message in a bottle. And then when someone comes back and says, "Oh, I read that," or "I listened to that," it's like someone got your message that's out there in the digital space, and then it starts a new conversation like that, like that random message that you floated out there. And so I like that part where it says it sparks a random dialogue that you never thought about.
Yeah, I really like that message in the bottle metaphor. I think I'll keep that in mind as I'm throwing stuff out into the universe.
Yeah, the message in the bottle with the black man with Austin tattooed on his leg.
All right.
Maybe you can make a story where a guy fell off a boat.
Yeah.
He was trying to get back to Austin. I'm about to create a story right now.
I was going to say, maybe you could write
I got a story. This story right now I got going in my head. It's got Patrick Ewing. It's got Patrick Ewing, me, a boat. I'm already started, man. I'll send you. It'll be 2 paragraphs.
Well, there's a lot of 2-paragraph stories now. Flash fiction is very popular. So
okay, I'm not joking. See, I'm learning something new. What's that? What's flash fiction?
So flash fiction is, people define it differently depending on who you ask. A lot of times, like literary journals, a lot of them will say like 1,000 words or less, which is like 3 pages, or some define it as 500 words or less. But the idea is just like a compressed story, like a very short story.
Do you read it out loud, or like?
I can see like that compressed story being that one of those like a new thing I've seen. Instead of like slam poetry, people are doing like they're trying to become professional storytellers. Sure. Where they tell the story. I could see someone writing that and then delivering that really quick story.
Yeah, and a lot of like in the literary scene, a lot of reading series like bars and cafes or whatever, they like to keep readers their reading times down, because like people don't have a lot of attention span for hearing a 30-minute story. So yeah, I've noticed definitely a lot of flash fiction being read at readings.
Okay, so you might have tapped into some. I might throw in some random stories out there in flash fiction,
in the flash fiction world. So going back to the creative process, kids, family, inspiration, you talked a little bit about the discouragement. So what are some things that have been discouraging during this process? And then what ways have you addressed that discouragement?
Yeah, that's a good question. As a writer, it's cliched to say, but I'll say it anyways. Like 99% of the time, it's rejection. I've published a book. I've published, dozens of stories and essays, but I've also been rejected like hundreds and hundreds of times. So there's that side of it that is, can be discouraging. I think I've developed a pretty thick skin over time, and have realized, like, as an editor also, that you can't take it personally. It's a numbers game. It's a fit. It's about fit, and it's about persistence. It's about just continue to try. If you believe in your work, just keep working on it, keep making it better, keep sending it out, keep sharing it with fellow writers, etc. I think the harder part for me, like that part's kind of become, I've gotten pretty used to that over the years. The harder part is just when I'm feeling like writing is a chore. Sometimes I feel like I want to like it more than I do. And during those times, like my method now to deal with it is to kind of like allow myself to feel that way, and maybe, try to focus on, like, there's a lot of different parts of writing, right? Like there's there's being out in the world and kind of like taking notes. There's reading. There's, there's working on old stuff. So I think I've come to realize that I'm not going to sit down 365 days, 12 months a year and just create new stuff. So sometimes I just need to focus more on reading and note taking. Sometimes I need to focus on digging into older stuff and kind of like finishing it or making it better. And then sometimes, which is the most exciting part, you really do sit down and create something new. And that's when, I think that's like the part that gets me most excited. Although when I get into an old story and I'm able to revise it and make it better, that's exciting too. But, I think it's just important to realize that will come when it comes, and you don't need to sit down and write, 5 to 10 new pages every day. That's not what being a writer has to be. There's a lot of different parts of it.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And one of the things I thought about was the revisiting the old stuff. I might start doing out my own audio clips and stuff because I have times where I've created and tossed it or forgot about it. One thing I thought that I want to bring up is now you are working at Mason, right? And you're teaching the youth, right? Do you ever see like one person in your classes where you're like, okay, I know that that's the young Michael that they want to actually pursue writing full time? They come to you for mentorship. Have you seen yourself on the other end now guiding the new writer? Like, not everyone wants to be a writer, but have you seen or identified some that come to you and say, yeah, I really want to be a writer, and they've asked you for advice?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, I've taught at, I think, like 4 other universities, and I taught a lot more creative writing classes at some of the other universities. And so I had more students in those classes who were actually like specifically interested in writing. And so I did have students like that, and I still keep in touch with some of them in various ways. At Mason, I've only been here a couple of years, and I haven't taught creative writing yet, but I have had some really talented students, and I've had some students talk to me after class about writing. Like we'll walk for 10 minutes, in our on our way out of off campus, and I've had some fun conversations. I had a student come to a reading of mine at the Writers Center in Maryland. She showed up with her aunt. That was pretty cool. And I've told, a handful of students, like, hey, I think you're a really talented writer. And just kind of let them know, just giving them that, that affirmation in case they are interested. Hopefully I'll teach some, creative writing classes in the future. I'm supposed to be teaching an international publishing class, at some point. And so, hopefully I'll come across more students at Mason who are, already, doing it or interested in pursuing creative writing.
Have you, and this is just a random question, have you checked out like the Volition, the literary magazine that we got at Mason, and checked out and just like randomly saw the talent there? I've got a couple copies, but have you ever just checked that out? I'm curious.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to, read it cover to cover, but yeah, I've looked at it, and yeah, looks like there's, a lot of cool stuff happening.
Yeah, I might do that too. That's going to be in our LinkedIn stalking
Nice.
project.
Nice.
So, I got one more question, then we'll go to our shot for shot portion. So, what does success, when this next project comes out, what does success look like for you? Like, let me do it in a 2-part. What felt successful about your past work? So, like, when you finished it, what was successful about that? What felt successful? And then what are your expectations for feeling successful with the second work?
Yeah, so I think with the last project, I think I had a lot of different stories that could have been in that book, and I think I'm very happy with and sort of proud of how I trimmed it down to like a slimmer, kind of punchier book that I think, each story is, similar in quality. Like I feel like it's, it reads and the stories are kind of speaking to each other in different ways. And so I'm happy with like what the table of contents ended up being. It was kind of a crazy time for me when the book came out, cause I had a 10-month-old child. But I did get out, I did like 6 or 7 events, in a sort of moderate way. I pushed the book out there a little bit. For the next book, I think just getting it into more readers' hands. I think now I'm kind of more ready to promote my work. I think I understand the process more. I'm more excited about promoting it. I think I'm in kind of just a different stage of life, and a little bit less afraid of promoting work, because I think when that book came out, I didn't really understand how it worked, and now I've seen a lot of other writers do it, and so I think success for this one would just be, again, like coming up with the best. This one will be 7 or 8 stories and I think I know what they are. but sort of the best, most cohesive, punchy book that will hopefully resonate with a lot of people, and hopefully I'll just get it out in a lot of readers' hands.
Well, I was about to say, technically you already started, man. You on the podcast train. Yeah, you've seen it like now. Authors, if you got a book, you got to be on these podcasts.
Exactly.
And stuff. So this is your first one. I might have to get you back after the book and then get,
absolutely
hook you up with all these other podcasters. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll tell you one thing I've learned in the podcasting world is now I get a lot of emails on behalf of these people that are agents. They could be like, "Hi, I know a great guest for your show," and it's like a writer, and then I say yeah and whatever. So you might be on those, like, this might be the first of like 50,000 podcasts. You better be used to talking on the mic.
I'm going on tour. I'm ready.
Book tours and all that. So this is the part of the show you already know. Shot for shot, you get to ask me any random question, or I ask you. You want to go first? I'll go first.
You go first.
All right. So basketball is your love. I know that. You put up with our football poll, but I know basketball is your number one. So I have it's a two-parter. One, and I was having this conversation. Do you believe, I'll do the two-part, but it's a two-question then. One, do you believe that Djokovic, how you pronounce his name?
Jokic,
yeah. I'm going to say Jokic. Do you believe that he is a superstar or all-star? And you know the difference, right? You can build a whole thing around him.
Yeah.
All-star, they make, they're top tier. They make the all-star game. But superstar is like the elite cream of the crop. What do you think?
Absolutely, without hesitation, superstar.
Okay.
I believe he's either the best or maybe second best player in the league. I am drinking the Jokic Kool-Aid 100%.
Who is then who would be in competition with him?
Maybe Giannis. I think it's probably between Giannis and Jokic. Right now, Jokic has the upper hand just because he's coming off winning the championship. I think he's just so versatile. He makes everyone better. He's not as good on defense as Giannis, so he's not as much of a two-way player, but he's so good. And coming off the championship, it's hard not to think of him as the best or at least like a top 2 or 3 player. Okay,
and this is the further one. Do you think he's in the top 5 European players of all time list? The European invasion of basketball. We have some great Europeans that have come and played, Dirk and all that. Yeah. Do you think he's top 5? And then if he's in the top 5, who are some other people that'd be in the European elite Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what that list would be. Obviously, Dirk was the first person who came to mind. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Tony Kukoc, but he wouldn't be.
Tony, what's the boy, Parker?
Tony Parker.
Tony Parker's in there.
Tony Parker's in there. Jokic could.
Yeah, I'm thinking like this: Tony Parker, Jokic, Dirk. Technically, is Greece in Europe?
Yeah.
Oh, so there you go.
Giannis. Luka.
Luka. There you go. You got a solid squad.
Yeah, I think the international players. If you add Africa and add like Joel Embiid. The international.
If we say international,
if we go international, they're just crushing it right now.
And we did international we did an international all-star team versus all-American all-star team. I would give it to international.
I think so, definitely.
International 5 versus American 5.
Yep.
I give it to international.
I would too. I absolutely would. And if you look at the MVP voting from like this past year and the past couple of years, you have Giannis, Jokic, and Embiid all top 3 like the last few years. And then you have Doncic as well, Luka. Yeah. So I think he's absolutely a top 5 international player. Dirk is probably, I don't know, there's probably a debate between Dirk and Jokic, and also like Jokic is like mid-career, and so you have to see what happens.
Yeah, Dirk. I used to play with him all the time in NBA 2K.
Oh yeah,
and you could just shoot anywhere with Dirk.
Yeah. No, he was incredible, and I'm glad he got his championship at the end.
Yeah. All right, what's your question for me?
All right, can I stay on the basketball topic?
Whatever you want.
All right. Now that we're here, so who was your like? You can't say Michael Jordan, but after that, who was like your favorite 90s?
Oh, no, I definitely can tell you that without Jordan.
Who were your favorite 90s basketball players, since I loved the 90s NBA?
Okay, so this is a great question. One, I got to find it somewhere, maybe it's still at my dad's house. I used to have NBA Jam
I did
VHS.
Too. Oh, okay.
Where it was the NBA, the VHS tapes.
Yeah.
Well, the NBA Jam video game. I'm talking about the NBA Jam. It was like, It would start off with like Ahmad Rashad, and then with just a music video with dunking, right?
I loved Ahmad Rashad inside NBA stuff Saturday morning. Yeah.
And all it was like Sean Kemp, like just dunking on people. So I'll tell you a couple people in regards to different things. So my all-around favorite player that I was always jazzed about, had his jersey, loved him so much, was Grant Hill. Then he got hurt, but for me, I was like Grant Hill. Like, he was the second coming. And I think a lot of people would agree that if he didn't get hurt, his career would have been just crazy, right? Like, and when I had his Pistons jersey, I love Grant Hill. One of my favorite dunkers, that's kind of hard to say. Vince Young was amazing, but one of my favorite dunkers in actuality, was Sean Kemp. Like, jumping out the gym. And I watch videos now, and I think that's all he did. I don't really see him shooting. He could shoot. I'd say he had a little bit of jumper, but he really was that. So Grant Hill was my favorite all around. Sean Kemp. And then my favorite shooter just to watch shoot was Reggie Miller. I loved Reggie Miller. And I can't shoot for a lick, but talking about just someone that could just shoot from anywhere and was just awesome. There was a lot of players in the 90s that I rocked with besides Jordan that were like where they had the jerseys. I think the jerseys, I had Grandmama, anyone from the Hornets gear was the best colors. Yep. So even if you don't like the Hornets, everyone had the Hornets jacket.
Muggsy Bogues.
Oh, yeah. So honestly, you really just made me feel real nostalgic. I think 90s basketball was the peak, I can't imagine those people with social media and all that now, but they had everyone's attention. They had shoes. They had that high tops. Yeah, that was probably the best era of basketball.
Yeah, no doubt.
I never do a shot for shot bet, but who is your 90s person?
I loved, the list is so long. I have to throw Dikembe Mutombo on there in part because I met him. So I had this picture with him where I think I'm in 6th grade and, I'm like up to his knees. Obviously that's an exaggeration, but so I'll throw him in just because I met him. I liked Chris Webber because we share a birthday and he went to Michigan, and for a while I kind of liked that team.
That's a squad.
Yeah, I liked Pippen, of course. If Jordan's off limits.
Yeah.
But yeah, so many everyone. I also liked those Hornets players. I liked Penny Hardaway and Barkley was fun and still is fun as a commentator. So
then maybe sometime when I fix my attic, because the stairs are broke, I had to show you all my 90s. I have my cards still.
Oh yeah,
I kept all my basketball cards. So this has been great. This has been a great time having you on the podcast. As you know, you're a very loyal listener. You know what time it is. It's called Shout Outs and Plugs. So put all this in the show notes, your other book, your new book, whatever, and all the ways that the listeners can engage and follow up with you. So stage is shout outs and plug.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks so much for having me. This was so much fun. So my website is michaeldon.net. So my first name, Michael, last name, Don, D-O-N.net. You can find my book there, which is Partners and Strangers. You can also find it everywhere where you can find books. You can order it online pretty much everywhere. On Twitter, where a lot of the writers hang out, but they're kind of, some are leaving. It's at Michael L. Don. And I think I have an Instagram account, but I don't know what it is. So
Excellent. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for being on the show. Positive Filter listeners, as you know, every episode is dedicated in the memory of my late father-in-law, Jeff Kirsch. So please consider donating to the Jeff Kirsch Anti-Hunger Fund, which I put in the show notes of every episode. Please share, like, subscribe. That all helps elevate the podcast. I cannot do this without my listeners and everyone that supports it. So thank you so much, and have a good day, and we're out. Thank you for listening to Positive Filter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement.
Thanks for listening.